But now I'm starting to buy into Wexford a little bit. I mean, just Laois, like, they were really poor. I mean, I don't want to be insulting, but, that's not Liam McCarthy level hurling, the way they kind of performed or what they were able to produce. They just leave physically off it. They can all hurl. They always can hurl. But they just seem tactically off it, physically off it. Maybe it was the impossible kind of matchup for them and being a little bit harsh on Cheddar there. But they did seem a nice bit off it. And I think Wexford, even though they lost that league match by a fair scoreline, I think they nearly go in as favourites here, because, like, Kilkenny, I think we had thought, Kilkenny are still Kilkenny. They're going well here on the basis of their league performances and the fact that they were getting their wins. But when you reflect on Division 1B, it's nowhere near as strong as Division 1A. I mean, just because basically Laois are in there, Antrim are in there, Clare aren't necessarily considered All-Ireland winner contenders, even though maybe they're kind of changing a few tunes lately. Dublin aren't considered All-Ireland contenders. Wexford weren't necessarily considered contenders, plus they sold as a pup that day. Their players looked jaded. And the way Kilkenny collapsed against Clare at Cusack Park, I think my perceptions have sort of changed. And I wonder, even with Kilkenny folk, and please get your comments in and disabuse me if you think I'm wrong, I'm starting to think of Wexford as the favourites here.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I would have been negative enough about Wexford maybe up until last weekend, and I'm reticent to take too much stock on it, but you do have to take some stock on it. In fairness, we don't know much about what's going on in Kilkenny at the moment. It's been very, very quiet. I believe Walter broke his nose in that last game against Clare, and there was talk of a bit of a concussion. I'm not 100% sure that Conor Delaney, I believe, had another setback with his quad. Doesn't look like he'll be playing championship this year. Richie Hogan didn't feature throughout the league. We don't know whether he's going to be playing a part. It'll be interesting. We'll only know when we see the 26th at the weekend. Something I still can't get my head around is how Joey Holden's not in this Kilkenny team. I cannot get my head around how he's not playing either cornerback or wingback in this team. To me, he's one of their better defenders, and you know exactly what you're going to get out of him a given day. Adrian Mullen coming back is big for them. He had picked up a bit of a knock against Clare in the last game. I believe he's fit to play. Darren Mullen, who played very little league, is fit to play as well, and could potentially come in at wing or cornerback. But like we're talking about, wings and cornerbacks and midfield there. Like, we don't know who the two starting cornerbacks are going to be. We don't know who the starting wingbacks are going to be. We don't know who the starting midfielders are going to be. So there are definitely some question marks over Kilkenny that, the solidity of it. We just don't know who's going to be playing in those positions. And I'm surprised they went the whole way throughout the league without forming, I suppose, a really solid back nine that you're going to know who's going to be playing in all those positions. So it's going to be really, really interesting this weekend. And again, I presume we're going to see Matt O'Hanlon's role on TJ Reid being reprised. I'd be amazed if we don't, because it's just worked so well down through the years. So you'd imagine Matt O'Hanlon's going to pick him up again. And you just wonder, I'd say James Bergen maybe emerged a small bit, and Billy Ryan to some extent through the league, but you just wonder who are the lads that are going to pick up the slack outside of TJ.
Wally did return to form a little bit when he came in against Clare before the broken nose. I think Adrian Mullen was doing well also. He went off just before half-time at that stage.
Niall Brazel has left the squad as well, Shane. He came on in the Leinster final last year and actually set up a score, and he came on the All-Ireland semi-final last year. So as well, so that's someone who was in the mix who has left the panel. Just an interesting question.
He came on against Clare as well, by the way.
Yeah. So he's actually left the panel since. You know the way consistency was always the pillar of Brian Cody's teams. But when you look at 2019, a big result against Limerick, and then a very, very poor All-Ireland final performance. You can take into the red card into account or not, whatever you like. But then a big 15 minutes against Galway to win Leinster, and then a collapse against Waterford, having collapsed.
So we're not seeing 70-minute performances, what you're saying?
Well, we're not. When's the last 70-minute performance from Kilkenny in a big game is probably the All-Ireland semi-final in 2019. And then, unlike Kilkenny teams, they didn't back it up in the final. They didn't back up the Leinster final performance in the second half against Waterford at all, having non-delivered against Dublin in that second half as well. And so that definitely has to be a worry.
Yeah, Henry Shefflin had said when we interviewed him at a press meeting not so long ago that he thinks that the meltdowns were in the rearview mirror. Maybe they are, and this is the perfect game to sort of prove that. because Wexford will feel that they're very much, right there on their level, even if they're just as inconsistent. But maybe, like, it's a very fair point. Like, Kilkenny team were battering teams for 70 minutes for years when they were very clearly way ahead of the rest of the pack at that stage. But maybe it's more difficult now to beat a team for 70 minutes. Limerick do it fairly convincingly at times. But it's not that, like, is it that Kilkenny no longer perform to their kind of level for 70 minutes, even if the other team's level rises above it? Is that they're within the 70 minutes kind of dipping? So, like, before, you were like, what you'll get out of Kilkenny players, they'll play hard for 70 minutes, they'll be competitive, and that's it. So are they now kind of having dips in that within games? Like, even I'm looking at the second half against Clare here, and for the last, I think, 10 minutes, like, they had very few chances. They had a wide from Pádraig Walsh, they had a point from Owen Cody. TJ Reid strangely missed a one-on-one against Eibhear Quilligan. That was a good save now, but strangely missed that. Martin Keown was hooped. And then Liam Blanchfield hit a wide as well. And meanwhile, Clare were putting up score after score. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 or 7 scores there in the last 10 minutes. Completely took over a game. And even just the fact that Clare were able to solo up the centre of them, David Reedy's goal being a perfect example, knocked it into the top corner. Tony Kelly was able to come through untouched, more or less, and slam one into the top corner. So was that kind of part of it now, that they're no longer beating teams for 70 minutes? And if you can keep Pádraig Walsh out of the game, obviously a superstar in hurling sense over the last number of years, which Clare managed to do, they didn't make a hero out of him. That there's a dearth of quality around the rest of the field. And, we've kind of talked about their entire backline and midfield is probably, a huge amount of those players are probably wing backs that are repurposed for other positions. So Kilkenny folk, please get your comments in and let us know what you think. But this is just kind of us kind of teasing out what we think is happening with Kilkenny and why they're not necessarily dominating as they were.
Well, it's funny, like, we were just, when we were chatting off air, you kind of just said which team has more flaws, and when you put it out there, you're probably saying, okay, we don't know who the two Kilkenny cornerbacks are going to be. We won't be sure who the wing backs are going to be. We won't be sure who's going to be midfield. We're not sure who's going to assist TJ, who is definitely going to offer something concrete. That's going, like, something Billy Ryan could offer it on a day, Owen Cody could offer it on another day. So we're not sure. So there's definitely a lot of question marks over Kilkenny. Now, in fairness to them, the question marks have generally gotten definitive answers down through the years. And, like, I actually,
in recent years, though, years they haven't, because they collapsed last year against Waterford, hammered in the All-Ireland the year before.
I suppose, like, if I'm thinking of the All-Ireland semi-final in 2019, like, I'd totally written off Kilkenny going into that game, and then all of a sudden to deliver probably one of the most complete performances of the last couple of years. There's probably I'd be
and really got a lucky sideline call at the end.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Mr. Tipperary. I was actually just going to check the odds of Kilkenny Wexford because I thought it was interesting to see. And I can't actually find it at the moment, but that's a real 50-50
Thanks for that information. That's very useful.
I'll get it in a second here. I'm trying to double job, and as you know, men cannot do two things at once. So talking and trying to look something up on the internet at the same time is not possible. But
I'll run through a few comments if you want to have a look at that there. And John S has said Davy finished in Wexford this year. I think Davy might say he'll be back, but I think public opinion won't be there from him, from what I see down here, unless we reach a semi-final. At least that is. And I wonder, obviously he's talking about an All-Ireland semi-final because they're already in the Leinster semi-final. Sean Sully, as much as Kilkenny did collapse against Clare, they're still very capable of bouncing back, much like how Limerick did with Cork. And that is true. Like, in the space of a week or 2 weeks, get some heavy training done, all of a sudden there's a bounce to you. Diarmuid O'Keefe is the perfect example. He looked stuck to the floor during the league, and I thought, is he kind of coming towards the tail end of his career? Then after the first minute or two against Laois, I saw him burning up the field with a ball. And it's very specifically watching Diarmuid O'Keefe with searing pace against Laois, that confirmed to me that Wexford sold as a pup during the league.